Donald Trump, who famously said over and over, America first, he wants to help his buddy, his right-wing buddy who runs Argentina, more than he wants to help and protect American farmers.
Senator Warren, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to us.
I am so glad to be here with you, and thank you for staying in this fight.
So we are on day 21 of the shutdown, and so far there's no public sign of any progress. You have said that the Republicans won't even come to the table on healthcare. Is there anything we in the public are not seeing, private conversations, any signs you're seeing that Republican unity is starting to crack on this?
So understand it this way. The answer is no. They are not coming to the table. But that's because the Republicans won't do anything until Donald Trump tells them to. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of Donald Trump. And the whole idea that we have these senators who represent people all around the country, people who will lose their health care, people who will see their health care premiums go through the roof, people who will be pushed out of nursing homes, people who will lose their home health aides, people who will, little tiny babies and their mamas who are going to lose access to health care. Instead of sitting down and negotiating and saying, look, guys, you just can't cut healthcare for that many people all around this country. Let's work something out here. They're just waiting for Donald Trump to tell them what they can do. And so far, Donald Trump hasn't been interested in this. And so the Republicans, they can't hear us. They don't want to talk. They don't want to negotiate. They just keep rolling right on through, even though millions of Americans are getting hurt and millions of Americans are currently getting their premium notices, and millions of Americans are saying, I don't understand a government that is willing to hurt its own people. But the Republicans just keep rolling right along.
When you talk about hurting its own people, one of the actions the Trump administration has taken since the shutdown is to start some mass layoffs, not just furloughing, but layoffs of federal workers, including, importantly to my audience, the office that advocates for students with special needs. It's called the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. It's not getting a ton of press, but I know that you began your career as a teacher for students with special needs. And I wonder if you would help us understand, what does the elimination of this office mean on a practical level for these students, for the parents, and for schools?
Okay, so understand that we passed the American with Disabilities Act back in the 90s to say that every kid is entitled to an education, because before that, often those kids were just shoved out and not given an opportunity. So the way it works, though, is that local school districts often don't have the resources, don't have the money, don't have the ability to help that a child may need. So the federal government, in Democratic administrations and Republican administrations, for decades now has funded that extra help. Sometimes it's a speech therapist. Sometimes it's a tutor for a child or a one-on-one aid for a child. Sometimes it's a wheelchair. Sometimes it's a van. You see them out on the roads that pick up kids because they can't ride in the bigger school buses. It's the things that let us say all of our children are valuable to us, and all of our children deserve an opportunity to develop as much independence and strength as they can. It's a statement of our values, and it pays off. These are kids who learn, they're in public schools, and they get a chance to grow and to be a part of America in truly meaningful ways. And it's not a huge part of the Department of Education in the scheme of this giant budget that we have to keep the government going. Donald Trump and the Republicans have come in with just like a pair of tweezers and said, we're going to take that part of the federal government and just pull it loose. And what happens to those kids? There'll be a few school districts that'll be able to make up some of the help, but most of them won't. So these children's lives, their futures, their opportunities to learn and to be part of a classroom to grow. Donald Trump wants to just take all that away. And the Republicans just, they cover their ears. They can't even hear it, the people here in Congress. What kind of person does that? I truly don't know, Jessica.
I also wonder about the knock-on effects to other students, parents, families, jobs. Another day when we have real time to talk, I'd love to get into it, but we don't have that much time, so I want to keep moving.
Okay.
You have said that the White House must release the September jobs report before the Fed meets later this month. Now, because we're in this government shutdown weird situation, they're planning to not do that. Would you explain why that data is so critical right now? What do you think it would show if we could see it? And does hiding it right now or not gathering it actually somehow help Trump's politics?
So understand, they already have the data. This is not like we're saying, bring in a team of 1,000 people and let them go out and collect this data from all around the country. They already had the data at the time the shutdown was declared. And we said, then go ahead and release it. And why do you need to release it? Well, let's start with the Fed. The Fed has to make a decision about whether to raise interest rates, keep interest rates where they are, or lower interest rates. To do that, one of the most critical numbers they need are the jobs numbers. In other words, are more people unemployed, or is the job market strong? That very much affects the economic decisions that the Fed makes. And understand, it's not just government. Individuals, companies around the country also want to say, we may want to make investments if it looks like the economy is doing this. We may not want to make investments if it looks like the economy is going down. And the jobs numbers are critical. That's why people pay so much attention to them. And the Trump administration, I don't want to say a word about the jobs numbers. Now, first of all, you can't hide reality forever, guys. It's going to come out. But it really gives you pause on what those numbers show. Why won't the Trump administration release these numbers? They have them. They know it is critical to the Fed that will be making a decision next week about interest rates. And yet they want to keep it under a big, heavy blanket. That should send off a lot of red flashing lights.
Is there a way the Fed could have access to those numbers even if they're not released publicly, or no?
I don't see any way that could happen. And particularly remember, Donald Trump is attacking the Fed every day. So, the idea that there's a great coordination between the Fed chair and the president of the United States seems pretty unlikely. But I really want to say this again. These are public numbers. They're gathered on our behalf as the American people. And frankly, we all have a right to see them, whether it's good news, bad news, or something in between. Everybody has a right to see those numbers. And Donald Trump is using the excuse of the shutdown not to have to tell. That should raise a lot of red flashing lights.
Talking about something else the government's doing on our behalf, the Trump administration has announced a $40 billion bailout for the collapsing economy in Argentina. So while we are furloughing workers here and stripping children with special needs of the support they require, the Treasury Secretary is doing basically, I think, a currency swap. But what really is interesting to me is that several hedge fund managers who are close to our Treasury Secretary could see huge windfall if Argentina's markets rebound.
Yep.
Can you explain to us, why would America bail out Argentina while not bailing out our own people? And what do you think are the larger implications and forces at play?
So first of all, we know the reason. There's a right-wing leader in Argentina who is in real trouble politically at home. And Donald Trump, he has sucked up to Donald Trump for a long time now. So he is a bud of Donald Trump's, and Donald Trump wants to help him out. And so he threw $20 billion his way. Oh, and when it turns out that hasn't been enough to help the economy, he's thrown another $20 billion their way. But so that's the reason. It's Donald Trump using your tax dollars to advance Donald Trump's own personal interests. But there's another layer to this one about Argentina. And that is, remember when Donald Trump started all those crazy tariffs? I mean, like up, down, sideways, more or less, last spring. China just responded by saying, okay, fine. We're not going to buy from American farmers. Now, soybeans are the biggest crop in the United States right now. And soybean farmers had long-term contracts with the Chinese. They were the single biggest buyers of soybeans, billions and billions of dollars worth of soybeans. And China just said, nope, not going to do it. So guess who slipped in and said, oh, buy our soybeans instead. Come on, who? Argentina. Argentina, and they cut a special deal with China so that China's now buying Argentinian soybeans. And here's the best part of this story. 1 week after the deal becomes public, right, that the Argentine farmers are all being helped out and the American farmers are eating dirt, what happens? Donald Trump, that's when he announces he's giving $20 billion to Argentina, which he then follows up with another $20 billion. But think about what that says. Donald Trump, who famously said over and over, America first, he wants to help his buddy, his right-wing buddy who runs Argentina, more than he wants to help and protect American farmers. Oh, and can we put a cherry on the whipped cream on this one? As if that is not enough for Donald Trump, he realizes Argentina is still not stabilizing, and he has not been able to protect the guy politically. He's now talking about America buying Argentine beef, so that Trump, having just taken a dump on American farmers, is now playing with the idea of taking a dump on American ranchers. Also, that Donald Trump can use, the United States government can use Americans' taxpayer dollars just to fund out his buddy who sucks up to him on a regular basis.
There is so much there, and I suspect somebody's getting rich off this that is in
Yep.
Argentina too. But I know you have a hard stop. I want to ask you one question before you go, which is, months ago, you and Senator Markey called for a probe. This is a different topic, into ICE's escalating aggression,
Yes.
including agents hiding their identities, targeting sensitive locations, physical harm. Did you ever get a response?
No. And it appears to have gotten much worse. We were right to demand that probe. We have tried to get others on board. There are more Democratic senators who have joined that. But remember the context. When Ed and I first got into this, it was when we were first seeing the videos of people just being snatched off the streets and disappeared by people wearing masks. And now we have seen it until for some, it almost looks normal. This is not normal. This is not how a democracy works. And I want to say this part one more time about it, Jessica. Donald Trump is where he is. A handful of Republicans in the United States Senate could join the Democrats and say no more of this. This has to stop. And it would happen. There really is still power over here in Congress. But so long as these Republicans just bend the knee to Donald Trump, we can't get the investigations going. We can't get the accountability going that we need. So when I saw the No Kings rally on Saturday in every state in the country, in cities all across this country, in little towns all across this country, it reminded me one more time just how important it is for people to speak out, and how pushing back against a would-be king is the most patriotic thing that people can do. We really need people to be speaking out now.
Well, Senator Warren, thank you, as always, for your voice and your time today. I want to show your office that I keep to time so we can have you back soon.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. It's so good to see you, and I'm going to go vote now.